Okay, so we do have a handful of people in here, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for attending session 2 of our parallel sessions today. I just want to remind people up front that this session, like all the other sessions, is being recorded. It is actually not being live streamed. This one is just being recorded and will be distributed on YouTube after the fact. So please, during the talk, submit questions, concerns, suggestions via Zoom chat. If you have something super urgent or if something is confusing, feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, I will monitor the chat for questions. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Dr. Mrinmoy Mukherjee from Northeastern University, who will be presenting some work that he and some collaborators did using CompuCell3D, I think a couple of years ago now, on a model of cluster size distribution of cells disseminating from a primary tumor. So we actually have a couple of people who are interested in doing some cancer modeling in their hackathon project, which starts tomorrow in the group today. So this will be a good talk for them, I think, to get a feel for some models that have looked at cancer already. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mrinmoy to get started.
Yeah, thank you, Hayden. So welcome to the module 5.3 of this CompuCell3D workshop. So today I will discuss about a paper published last year called Cluster Size Distribution of Cells Disseminating from Primary Tumor. I am Mrinmoy Mukherjee, a postdoc in Northeastern University, working with Professor Herbert Levin. So as Hayden mentioned, this meeting is recorded. Please submit your questions and suggestions via Zoom chat. Or at any point you can just raise your hand to ask some immediate questions if you don't understand something. So as I mentioned, this paper has been published last year in PLOS Computational Biology. So if you want for further details, you can see this paper. So as you know, most of the cancer-related death, almost 90%, is due to metastasis. There are different cascade of metastasis process. So in general, for any epithelial-like cancer, so the cell from the epithelial tissue release to the tissue medium, so composed of ECM and other non-cancerous cell, they invade and eventually they enter into the circulatory system and go to some distant organ, they release, and again they colonize. Or so this process, starting from epithelial cell, which are nicely tightly adhere and almost no migratory property, suddenly they become migratory and lose their adhesion. So this process is generally called EMT, that means epithelial to mesenchymal transition. So as they leave out the circulatory system in another organ, so there they again colonize, or this kind of process is called MET, or you can say mesenchymal to epithelial transitions. So in this, today we will focus on this first step of the cascade. So how the cell from a epithelial tumor release and go to the circulatory system. So as I mentioned already, the epithelial cells, the property, they are tightly adhered to each other. They have apicobasical polarity and they have almost no migrated nature. But when EMT happened, this epithelial to mesenchymal transitions, the cell lose their adhesion property, as you can see here, and they become a little bit elongated, and overall they got a migratory property because they have to invade the dense ECM tissue system to reach to the circulatory system. So over the decade, this EMT process, thought of as a binary process. That means there are two kinds of state of cells. One is called epithelial cell. I have already mentioned the property of the epithelial cell. Another is mesenchymal cells. Or at best, people have seen some kind of partial EMT state. So you can call it has little bit of epithelial nature, little bit of mesenchymal nature. That means is intermediate type of adhesion or intermediate type of migration property. But until recently, people have thought of as a binary process, the intermediate state as a metastable state or transit state. So one of the core EMT circuit, if you think, these, I will not go into the detail because in today's topic, we will not go into the gene regulatory network, but at least if you just think of 2 microRNA and their transcription factor SNAIL JAV, with this simple gene regulatory network, we can, if you solve some ordinary differential equation, you can get 3 state. As you can see, depending on the JAV mRNA and the protein SNAIL for a single cell, you when these 2 JAV and SNAIL express very less amount, you can call it epithelial state. And obviously in other extreme, when these 2 expression level is high, you can call it mesenchymal state. And also you can find intermediate state, which is stable. This solid line here represents the stable states, dotted line the unstable states. So as you can see here in this figure, solving this gene regulatory network, we find stable hybrid state. For more complete kind of gene regulatory circuit for EMT network, where within many components, people have also found computationally solving these equations with random initial condition, and they found the similar kind of states. So as you see, these each column here represent different gene level. As you see, you can clearly distinct 2 type of state, where these genes are expressed high, red, and blue, low, and this set of genes for this set of states, this set of gene expressed low and this high. But in between, clearly you can't cluster this region in either of 2 states, epithelial or mesenchymal. And not only that, you can find 2 kind of EM or hybrid state, you can say. We will call over in this presentation this kind of intermediate state either EM state or hybrid state. So hybrid means they have property of both epithelial and mesenchymal cell. So, and also this is a solution of this gene regulatory network within different with differential equation. But after that, in many experimental system or in many patient data, people have found the signature of this hybrid state. So in this paper for the head and neck tumor patients for single cell RNA sequence data, people have found that in a tumor, the invasive front, the cell express the partial EMT or this hybrid kind of state, or in the core of the tumor, these cells are more epithelial-like. And in the boundary, obviously, the cells are more mesenchymal-like, so they have to migrate. So what are the properties of this hybrid cell type of state? So in a scratch assay with cancer cell, people have shown when the cells express, here the 2 gene expression, CDH1 express the epithelial-like cell and BEAM expression expressed in the mesenchymal-like cell. So when this they manipulate these 2 type of gene expression in this cancer cell, when they found the cells with more hybrid nature looks like this, has a property of collective migration. When they heal the wound, they move collectively, but when they are more mesenchymal, like they move separately. So the feature of this EMT or the partial EMT, so now you can think of in a complete EMT, the cell go to complete mesenchymal state where the cell are isolated, almost no adhesion with the other cells, and they have very migratory. But in between and epithelial in the other end, when the cells adhere to each other strongly and they do not migrate, but in between there are cells, they can adhere to each other partially like this, and also they find some migratory nature. So the one interesting thing about this states are these hybrid state or this EM state are extremely plastic. So it can move. So you can think of energy landscape, this epithelial and mesenchymal states at 2 deep minima, and it is some kind of cellular minima, so that they can move back and forth towards epithelial or mesenchymal states. So now you can think of the picture in a little bit different way, the metastatic cascade. So consider a primary tumor of epithelial tissue. So the cell from this can release as a single cell and also as a cluster. So for single cells, if it is released as a single cell, this is more mesenchymal nature, or if it is released as a clusters, then they have hybrid kind of nature. So after that, these kind of cells enter in the circulation and do other process of the metastasis. So now one can ask, so what? So what are the special property of this hybrid state or the cluster of cell coming from this hybrid cell? So this, after entering into the circulatory system or blood, this kind of cluster is called CTC, circulating tumor cell. So in this paper with the prostate cancer data, so from the patient of prostate cancer, they identify the cellular cluster and they found the distribution of these cells. So here I collect the data distribution of the cluster size from many cancer patient data for different paper over the years. So you can see, we'll discuss this graph later also. So first you have to consider that depending on the cancer type or patient type, sometime we find mainly two kind of distribution. In one kind of distribution, so mainly say melanoma or this prostate cancer type, the probability of getting single cell cluster is higher than the probability of getting larger clusters. But in between, say, as you see this curve for breast cancer data, so there isn't a highest probability of getting, say, 4 cell clusters. So or sometime you can find clusters of very many cells, very large clusters, but the probability of getting those is very low. So what are the properties of the CTC clusters? They generally are 2 to 10 cells large, but sometimes you can find in many paper people have found in breast cancer from their blood cluster of very larger size, almost up to 100 cells. So they form before entering the circulation. And also interesting feature, because if one cluster has to form, they should have some addition property, and also they have to go to the circulatory system, so that they have some mesenchymal property. So in this intermediate epithelial and mesenchymal property, so to form a clusters, you need hybrid kind of cells. Compared to the single cell cluster, the CTC cluster has they have more metastatic potential. That means when they go to the other distant organ, so they have a higher potential to initiate the tumor again. And also they're more stem-like. So as you know, the stem cell to different cell transition. So because this hybrid cell has a more stem-like property, so they can initiate the tumor easily. So the compared to the single cell, CTC cluster has a higher metastatic potential. Also, they have a worse patient survival. So and also they resist the treatment. And another interesting property is they are heterogeneous. Heterogeneous means, so say imagine a cluster of 5 cells. So all the 5 cells has not equal property of adhesiveness or migration. They are extremely heterogeneous. That means you can think of a spectrum of EMT state in those clusters. So now you can think the EMT process as a continuous kind of process. So in the two ends, there is epithelial cell and the mesenchymal cell. In between, you can find many hybrid state with different degree of EMT. So in clusters, people found that there are different degree of EMT. So for the CTC clusters, now you can imagine two kind of scenario. This is a cartoon of a epithelial tumor. So the cell can release as a single cell or as a clusters. If there is a probability of getting more single cell as a CTC, you will find this kind of probability distribution, or if you can find more cluster kind of decimation, then you will find this kind of probability distribution. So there is some question in the chat from Bharat Vivan. Cancer cell by immune cells, so there is info that clean. Yeah, always. So here we are not considering the not only immune cell. There are many other cells, or maybe the drug attacking by some drug. It can be either by immune cell or different kind of cell. But this answer is not clear. But people have found that for the hybrid kind of cell, which from say multicellular clusters, they have a more survival property compared to the single cell clusters.
Right. Do you think those local minimas, which you showed on the energy diagrams, could be one of the reasons wherein, let's say, if the cell, the quasi cell, is in a stage where mesenchymals are more likely to survive, it can switch to mesenchymal type because it's a local minima, not a global minima like the epi and the mesenchymal. Could that be a reason? I was wondering.
Yeah, also, or you can think the reverse process, because they have to easily go to the epithelial state when they enter into other
the tissues. Yeah, the tissues where are the places where epi can survive better, they also have a tendency to switch back to epi then, right?
Yeah.
So is that one of the reasons why having a hybrid cell would have a better metastatic potential? Because that was the one thing which I was able to think about. Other than that, I'm not very sure why.
In this literature, there, so this is called plasticity. How plastic the cell.
Right. Okay.
So
Cool. Thank you so much.
Okay. Any further question till now? So now you can enter into the modeling of this thing.
Can you just go through in a very elementary way what is invasion?
Sorry, what?
What is invasion?
Invasion
what do you
means
mean by invasion?
Yeah, so when the cell release, okay, so maybe this picture will be helpful. Yeah, so when the cell release from this epithelial tumor, this space is not empty, right? So this is made of different kind of collagen or many numerous kind of cell. So this is a very dense tissue layer. So this cell have to move from this to they have to find the next circulatory system. So that they.
This is out of the tumor now?
Yeah, this is out of the primary tumor. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So they have to invade this dense tissue layer to reach to the circulatory system.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So here in this model, we just generally consider a circular tumor, and we'll mainly focus how the cell release as a single cell or as a cluster of cell. We'll try to find the cluster size distribution and compare with the patient data I have shown you previously. So we generally consider a very simple model. So that first we choose a circular kind of tumor with a few cells. Here red at the epithelial cell, and we consider the EMT process has already happened. That means some cell already converted to hybrid kind of cell, so the green cells. So we'll not consider the EMT here as a dynamic process. That means in our tumor, the number of epithelial and hybrid cell are fixed. So we choose 60% of epithelial cell and 40% of mesenchymal cells. And we put the epithelial and hybrid nature in the cell by their adhesion property and the migration property. So as you know, in CompuCell3D or the CPM model, the adhesion property is included by the contact energy term, and we add the motility term in a two different ways. First, the diffusive kind of motility, that means only the membrane fluctuation or the temperature kind of term. Later, we add some kind of active motility. That means we add some kind of external potential to the cells. So we also assume that the hybrid cell or the grain cells will form the clusters. Now we have to set up a simulation where this grain cell can release from this tumor, and we will calculate this size distribution of these clusters. So now my question is, I don't know about the audience here. So do you really want to do some practice here, or should I go through the slides?
If people would like to walk through the model
Okay.
with
Then
Mrinmoy, do a give a thumbs up in the window. If you'd like to walk through it together and actually do the code, put a thumbs up in the. So we got 1, 2. Yeah, so I think it'd be beneficial to step
Okay.
through it in real time. We have time here. We end at 4:15, so
Yeah, we have time. Yeah, I have prepared in both ways. I don't know so what to do.
Sure.
Yeah, in that sense. Yeah.
yeah, if we start getting really stuck, we can just move through, but I think it'd be good to walk through it here.
Yeah. Okay. So now, as you are already, I think for the week you have practiced many this kind of, but this is a very simple model. Just you can set up a simulation now, or maybe just say.
And if anybody can't get to the code with the link I posted, please let me know and I will email it to you.
Yeah, but okay, just you can open a new
Okay,
CC3D
sure, yeah.
project.
Even better if we can build it from scratch.
Yeah. So just first, okay, just choose your name and the folder and use the Python plus XML thing. So let me know if you just not going with the flow. So then we'll choose box size as 200 for the sake of time. It is better to have larger box for this kind of simulation, but when I show the result, I will show the result for the larger box. But for here, we'll choose for the smaller box. Choose 200 and choose periodic boundary condition. Lattice type is square. We will choose average membrane fluctuation as 1. Neighbor order as 2. Okay, and we'll choose the blob initial cell layout to create a circular kind of tumor. Now we'll choose 3 kind of cells. One is already medium, and we'll choose, say, epithelial leg, call it as E, and hybrid type, call it as H. Continue.
And very quickly, I just want to mention, we don't have access to our normal progress poll in this room. So if you do need us to slow down, please just say so in the chat.
Okay, yeah. Is it all right till now? Or?
Yeah, you can go ahead. I just want to we have a progress poll that we can throw up in the other room, but we don't have it here. So I was just letting them know to interrupt
So
if
now
they need us to slow down.
there we are not considering here any diffusion field, so skip that. For the cell properties and behavior, we will use the contact energy and volume flex and the surface flex only for the time. Contact energy, volume flex, and surface flex. Continue and finish your. Is it all right till now? Or Now we have to edit the files a little bit. Or everyone follows till this point? If you have any questions, you can put in the chat.
Can you increase the font a bit?
Okay.
Okay. Oh, beautiful. Now I can read.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So now if you go to the end of the XML file, so we have to create the tumor as the initial condition. So because the box size was 200, we'll put the center of the tumor as 100, 100, and Z is equal to 0. And we'll choose a radius of 65, no gap, 0. And each cell we will choose width as 5. That means this is a square of dimension 5. So you can think of its area as 25. And as we have mentioned that we have to choose 60% of epithelial cell and 40% of hybrid cell. So there is a way to do that. Either you can do that in the Python file, or there is an easier way to do it here. So as 60 is to 40, that means 3 is to 2. You can write 3 times E and 2 times H here. So it will randomly choose in the tumor of 60% epithelial cell and 40% hybrid cell. Now I don't know whether you have used it or not. So to differentiate, so generally one parameter here is the temperature. We choose it 1.0, but to differentiate between epithelial and hybrid cells, we need some kind of higher fluctuation for the hybrid cell. So to do that, either there is a way to use some kind of parameter which is called fluctuation amplitude that you can mention in Python also, or for the we will use it here. So you can comment out the temperature term, and you can add the fluctuation amplitude module. So for I am pasting it in the chat. Yeah, you can directly copy paste from the chat this fluctuation amplitude. You can put in the pot sections this thing, and you should comment out the temperature term.
So we do have some people using CompuCell on nanoHUB rather than on desktop, and nanoHUB prevents them from copying directly from their local clipboard to the remote clipboard. So if we can just give people maybe a minute to type this in by hand.
Okay, you can also, I have mentioned it here. You can type it, if you can see it properly, then you can type it from here, from the slide.
I just wanted to ask if is it not available on the DML, the CC3 DML file?
I don't think so. I don't think so. It is available in the Python snippet, but as we are not changing cell to cell, it is not good to change there. You can also change there in Python.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
So here I choose epithelial cell for 1 and choose a higher number for hybrid cell as 6. So that obviously depends on how you choose the contact energy term. But for this parameter space, let's choose 1 and 6 for 2 kind of cell. And don't forget to comment out the temperature term, the default temperature term. Should I go ahead or wait here?
Has everybody had a chance to copy this from the slides? Just do a thumbs up in the thumbs up emoji if you're ready to progress. So we got 1, 2. You can also put done in the chat if you're ready to move on. 3, 4. I'll wait for a couple more people to say done and then we'll move on.
Okay, so now we have to fix the area. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying, I think we're probably good to go. If you're still typing or if you get behind, please do let us know in the chat. So yeah, you can go ahead, Mrinmoy.
Yeah, okay. Now we have to change the area and perimeter term because we have choose 5 as a diameter of the cell. So just change the parameter for the volume, and we just choose this lambda strength as 1 for all the thing, and this target volume and target surface as 25. So the reason for choosing the target surface as 25 is, we'll discuss later what will be the effect of the target surface. But for the time being, let's choose, you understand why you choose volume 25, because just imagine it is a square cell, but changing the surface, target surface parameter, you can make the cell a little bit elongated or circular. But for the time being, let's choose 25. And now the contact energy term. So here we'll change the adhesion property of the cells by this contact energy term only, because we have already choose their fluctuation amplitude 1 and 6. So we have to, we'll see different cases how you choose the contact energy terms. But there are many, actually 5 parameters. So changing everything will be difficult. So just for this scenario, just choose epithelial contact energy as 2 and hybrid contact energy as 6, because hybrid cell has a lesser contact. That means we choose a little bit higher contact energy. And as default, medium contact energy is 0. And choose a very high number for the medium E cells contact energy, because we need a really tight tumor, so that they can't move. So that's why we choose a very high value. So as you know, in fact, it is the original paper of the CPM model doing this cellular sorting phenomena. There they explain these things by the surface tensions. So it is the epithelial cell medium surface tensions defined as, imagine there are 2 cells. How do they like? They like to contact each other, or they like the medium. So this thing we can calculate by this cell medium contact energy minus cell contact energy by 2, because 2 cells are involved. So here we choose this gamma or surface tension between epithelial cells and medium very high number, very greater than 0, to keep intact the tumor of epithelial cells. Now we'll vary the other parameters. So for the time being, just choose epithelial and hybrid cells parameter as 6, and we will test 2 cases: hybrid medium contact energy as 2 and 6. So first, let's try 2. So put this contact energy terms shown in this XML file. Fix everything, just we'll need to change the medium and H contact energy. put other thing as it is. Just we need to change this. For the time being, you just put 2. And try to run. Are you getting the initial configuration like this? No, no, just you can run it. I think I run the wrong file. So listen to this. Yeah, now you can run. Are you getting this kind of thing? So Caleb, I don't know how to pronounce it in name. So he has asked his cells do not separate. So maybe just there are two issue can happen. So just check the fluctuation amplitude of hybrid cell high as 6, and again carefully check the contact energy terms. You really need to have just put these numbers. Medium has 0, medium epithelial has 20. Will not change those things. Medium H will change, but for the time being put 2. To get this kind of separation from the tumor, we need 2. I will explain why we need 2. And epithelial is 2, epithelial hybrid is 6, and hybrid is 6. These all these are fixed. Just check with these numbers, and also change the neighbor order to 2. Okay, thank you. You got it. So, and just now change if everyone got this kind of decimation of as a single cell from the class from the tumor. So you should see the hybrid cells release as a single cell. But now if you change this medium and H cell contact energy to 6, say, and if you save it and run this thing, then all these classes. Just similar thing, just only change the medium hybrid cell contact energy and run this. So you are not seeing any decimation, right? But one thing you can see here, you can you are finding some kind of sorting behavior. It is partial sorting. Sorting means one kind of cell will go to the boundary and other will be in the core. So here green cell like the medium more compared to the epithelial red cells. So that's why they are going towards the boundary. But you need to really choose for getting the perfect sorting of one thing first. You have to wait a long time, and also you need to choose the contact energies in a particular order. See the original paper by James Glazier and Grainer, I think around 95 or 96, to how to choose the. But here our concern is not the sorting behavior. First, try. We will just try to. So, is there any question? Okay, so if everyone is getting that, so now we'll try to rationalize this thing. So actually, this age cell clustering or releasing from the primary tumor depending on the cell medium surface tension, defined in a similar way. So you have to define gamma surface tension between the hybrid cell and the medium as contact energy between hybrid cell and medium minus hybrid by 2. So if gamma HM less than 0, that means this, the age cell likes the medium more compared to another age cell. So that's why they are released as a separate cell. So you are getting, that's why you are getting for JHM is equal to 2. So if you put JH is equal to 2, and because the JH is 6, 2 minus 3 is minus 1, it is less than 0. That's why you are getting single cell decimation. So you can, initially people have thought this thing as a EMT transitions. So it is like single cell decimation only. So you can call it a pure mesenchymal kind of cell if their surface tension is less than 0. But to get cluster, we'll discuss later how to release them from the tumor. But for the time being, to get cluster or this kind of partial sorting in this tumor. So that means the green or hybrid cells go towards the boundary, keep the epithelial cells in the core of the tumor. So you really had to be greater than 0. So here we choose 6. That means 6 minus 3 is equal to 3. So that is greater than 0. That's why you are not getting any decimation as a single cell. So now the real question is, in this scenario, when we expect, so choose the value as 6. So what do you think we should do to release the cluster from the tumor? You can put in the chat your suggestion. We need some kind of cluster-based decimation, right? So that means we need higher value of JHM 6. But for this case, these are not releasing. So this is some kind of partial sorting happening. So what we have to do in terms of contact energy to release them? So you can check with higher value of amplitude, fluctuation amplitude also. You will not get any release. You really need to have changed the contact energy. So what do you think? Which contact energy should we change? Yes, Bharat. We need to have So we need to break the bond between epithelial and hybrid cell. That means, so one way can be we have to increase the JEH, so contact energy between epithelial and hybrid cell. So now you can try with this. You'll see very interesting phenomena here. So just don't change the medium hybrid contact energy. It is 6. So we already checked the case for 6, the last one. So now try to increase that to say 25. What you are getting. So now you have to change this EH energy as 25. I don't know what happened in this new version of CompuCell3D. It always, when I try to change the parameter, and always crashes. So from the similar kind of initial condition, just change the EH contact energy to very high value, say 25. And try to run. So are you getting this kind of thing? Should I go ahead or wait for some time?
Anybody else? So Bharat says, yes, he's got it. Who else has it? If you want to put Don in the chat.
So
Or let
this
us-
is very, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, or let us know if you're having an issue.
Yeah. If you are getting this, just change this to a little bit higher. So say 30. Let me know what is happening there. Just change a little bit more, 30, say. So with this kind of energy, this high energy, you will find this cluster-based decimation here. So either the cluster can be small or large, depending. So you can find it, you can calculate a distribution of this cluster size. But so if you are getting this picture, then I will try to explain this time.
Okay. So it's not, nobody's posting they're having trouble. So I think it's okay to go ahead and move
So I
on.
think it's clear then. So one thing you really have to do here, just say, try to simulate in a little bit larger simulation box. So otherwise this cluster will not move because we don't have enough space to move in this simulation. But another thing also, you have to wait a little bit, say Monte Carlo steps up to 50,000 or something like that to see the proper cluster. If we, this is the picture from this, here we wait up to 50,000 Monte Carlo steps, and we'll see, we'll try to explain this different scenario. So as you know, this very less epithelial hybrid contact energy, we'll see some kind of partial shortening, and there is no chance of break the bond. But as you slowly increase that, as you see this kind of phenomena at say 25 value. So these things you can call in this language of tumor literature, it is called budding. So this epithelial hybrid cell actually from small buds. So these are called tumor bud. And this is really in the boundary, say this is the transition point, this 25. So as you in this parameters range, obviously. So as you increase more and more, so you will find this kind of dissemination from this tumor, cluster-based dissemination. But the problem here is that if you observe, if you run the simulation and see the clusters inside this epithelial cells, they generally don't move at all. So why it is happening, you think? So this is some kind of pinning of hybrid cell clusters in the tumor, inside the core of the tumor. So what is the reason behind that? So anyone can put some suggestion in the chat. you want.
So Bharat guesses small neighbor order.
Yeah, that is one thing, but I think mainly it is happening because because the JEH energy is very high. So this hybrid cell is seeing a very large energy barrier to move. So this is the main reason they are pinned here. So although we have choose a very weird way to see the cluster-based decimation, but this is not really correct. So here the hybrid cell. So imagine this tumor size is very small. So it is a very large tumor. So somewhere inside, some cells will always be trapped. They can't move. Only the cell in the boundary, due to the initial sorting process, they can only break the bond. So with this contact energy, with this only the temperature kind of term or the membrane fluctuation thing, we can't really achieve this cluster-based decimation properly. So if you remember from our introduction slides, so there is biological cell, they have some kind of intrinsic motility. So they are like active matter. So you need to have put extra energy to move them. And another thing also, as you see, if you remember this process, this scratch as experiment, these hybrid cells really move collectively. So we have to incorporate some kind of motility in the hybrid cells, which can incorporate this collective behavior. So there are many ways in literature of active matter or this tumor literature. There are many ways to incorporate this kind of extra motility term. So in CC3D, so there is a way to, already, I think there is a way to add extra energy to the Hamiltonian. So this is external potential plugin in the Python snippet. So here we add motility term as this n is the polarity direction of the cell, or is their position vector. Mu is the strength of the force. It's really this is the motile force acting on the center of mass of the cell, and this, as I mentioned, n cap is the polarity. So the collectiveness really depend on the how you update the polarity rule. So in general, if you think the tumor microenvironment, there are many chemical signaling. There are many other non-cancerous cells which can help also. The cells can really move in a persistent way. So if you think of bacteria, so not in this scenario, so there is one clear indication of this is called run and tumble. So the cell run for some time and suddenly change their directions. So this running length, it's called the persistence. So here we use some kind of rule taken from this paper. So here we assuming the cells remember its velocity. So that means the polarity direction of the cell will change depending on his mean velocity for a certain time. So if we choose tau time interval, so for the tau time interval, you will calculate the average velocity of this cell. And if you normalize with that, you will find the direction. So that means up to tau time, it will not change his directions. After tau time, it will change his direction depending on his previous velocity. This can lead to the collective motion of the cells. There are other many ways also. So in VSEC kind of model, so there the polarity direction is calculated by the average direction of the neighbor. And you will find many modification of this rule also in many papers. So there is certain finite memory of the cell. So there you have to then add a decay term here. So we'll choose this simple rule. So this is the last exercise, I promise. The other part I will discuss only the results. So just to see how to incorporate this thing in this CC3. So for that, we need to incorporate go to the XML file of the previous simulation. There we need to add external potential plugin in the XML file. You can go to the XML file and try to incorporate the external potential plugin. Yeah, here. You can really find here from this CC3D ML plugins and external potential. If you add it, then just delete all the other lines except these things. We will change the values in the Python file. And change, if you just add this thing, you will see that the rule or algorithm, there are two kinds of algorithm, pixel based and center of mass based. Change it to center of mass based. Initially, you will find it is pixel based. Only difference is it is acting on the pixels, or here it is acting on the center of mass of the cell. So depending on that, we have to choose the motility mu value here. Because generally if the cell has here the 25 pixels, so if you choose in pixel based algorithm, the value is as 1. So the center of mass based algorithm, you have to choose of the order of say 25. So it is really proportional to the area of the cell. Is it okay?
Is everybody keeping up? It's okay if we move on.
Yeah, okay. So now we have to go to the Python file. I think you have already incorporated this part in other exercise, but just we have to calculate the velocity for a certain time, right? So that we need to store the position data of the cells. So there is a way to do that here using the dictionary. So you have to store the center of mass data for the cell. So if you just go to the start function of this steppable, then you need to just put we'll only consider, we'll change the velocity of the edge cell only. So use that for the edge cell, just store their center of mass X and Y coordinate of center of mass to some dictionary. I call it as position tau X and position tau Y. You can name it anything. This is in the start function. Now in the state function, we need to choose some tau. Tau means for tau time, the cell will not change their polarity. So here we choose as a 50. So if MCS absolute value 50 is equal to 0, then you have to calculate the displacement dx and dy from its current center of mass and previously stored center of mass. And also you have to do the periodic boundary condition correction, because when the cells reach to the end of the box, otherwise we will calculate the displacement in a wrong way. So that we need to do the PVC correction in this way. Should I copy paste it, or you can copy it from here also?
If you want to copy and paste it in the chat so people have it to reference as we move forward, that would be useful.
No, first, I think first for the self function, you need to, in the self function, you need to store this center of mass data. And then in the step function, you need to update the polarity direction role. Three things to remember. This 50 here denote the tau. We really choose a very high value here. So that means up to 50 Monte Carlo steps, it will not change the direction. After 50, as a integer value of 50, 50, 100, 150, 200 in this way, it will change its polarity directions. For this thing, we need to calculate the velocity for the 50 steps. So that's why we initially store the value of the position, center of mass position, XY coordinate in some dictionary called position tau X, position tau Y. And we will now we are calculating the displacement from his current position for the previous positions and do the PVC correction. Now you can calculate the velocity. It is just the displacement by time, dx by 50 divided by 50. And now you have to update you have to store the center of mass position for this position tau X after these calculations. To get the direction, so this is the absolute value of velocity, right? So to get the direction, you need to normalize it. So for normalize, we function this some numpy function. So you have to import numpy as np in the top of the file to use this numpy function, as you do in Python. And as you get the direction after normalization, now we'll update this lambda vector. This is the component of the external potential in CC3D. So we'll update the lambda vector X and vector Y as this Vx and Vy. We'll multiply this self force mod. So this is the value of the mu. So for this thing, you need to define this value before the start function. Some parameter you defined here as self force mod. Just put some value there. You need to choose the negative value because this Hamiltonian is implemented as negative. So that's why negative that effectively will be positive. So choose some negative value, 40.01, say, self force mod, and we'll just multiply this value with the direction, velocity direction. And this velocity direction is actually updated at each 50 Monte Carlo steps. So this will lead to you the collective migration kind of property. If you can copy paste it, then let me know. I will go ahead.
We do have about 20 minutes left, and I want to leave maybe 10 minutes or so for questions. Just as a heads up.
Okay, then it is better to, I have a plan to share other stories also. So it is better to, you can practice it later then. So it will be, the code is available in the Google Drive folder. You can copy paste it from there directly. And so, if we choose a persistent time or a very high value set of, I will show you directly the result now for the sake of time. So, so you can think of what will be the effect of smaller persistent time. So actually, if I give you the answer, the smaller, higher persistent times give the more and more collective motion. So now, depending on we will fix the contact energy and this fluctuation amplitude to similar to 1. So now, depending on the mu, the strength of the force and the persistent time, we will get different kind of clustering. So as you see, for very small, there will be no decimation, and intermediate value, there will be large clusters. So I have a plan to give the exercise, but let's skip that. So what is happening actually? So if you plot the velocity map here, so just observe these two positions, this shown by this arrow. So here the cell try to align or move collectively, and here also they are trying to do that. But as time progresses, here they can manage to align to each other, but here they can't do that. So when they can manage to, when there is a large number of cells which can align to each other, so this collective force will be enough to break the bond from the blue cell set, that means the epithelial cells. So then these clusters will release in the medium. So if the cluster is large enough, then again their polarity can rearrange. So if there is a certain possibility, some portion of some cell move in a different directions in an aligned way. So this can also break from this. So you will get two clusters. So in that sense, if you wait long time, you will get a proper kind of cluster size distributions. So now for the rest of the slides, we will only consider two parameters. If you remember, the mu, the force strength, and the gamma. Gamma means just the hybrid cell and medium surface tensions. So as you see, this is the time series. For just observe any plot, that will be good. So if you see the A, that initially there is this is the average cluster size. So initially there is a large clusters. So eventually they will become smaller and saturate to certain values. So as you see, as you decrease gamma, so the cluster size becoming smaller and smaller. And also at a particular gamma, as you increase mu, the cluster size also decreases. As you see from here, so this is for 50, this is for 30. And also depending on the how is all the cell released from the primary tumor. So you can think that this is the fraction of hybrid cell released in the medium, depending on the mu for different value of gamma. So as if you see, as you increase the mu, the almost 90% of the cell released, but that also depend on the gamma value. If you increase the gamma, that means they are more they don't like the medium that much. So that means they will not go to the medium. So if you calculate this, for this cluster size calculations, if you see the codes in the Google Drive, there is a third folder there. We'll see how to calculate this cluster sizes. So if we calculate now the average cluster size depending on the mu. So for gamma 0 and -1, as we already have seen for the intrinsic motility case also. So all the clusters of this is a single cell clusters. That means average cluster size is 1. And also in any, as you increase the gamma, the cluster size becoming larger and larger and larger. But that also depend on the mu. For smaller mu, this is larger. But always you can see, just take the green curve, say gamma is equal to 3. So below this value, you will not get any decimation. So mu should be, for any value of gamma, mu should be greater than some kind of mu minimum. And as you increase the mu, the cluster size will decrease. This is the average cluster size. And there is a certain gap between these two. As gamma greater than 1, you will get, there is a higher possibility of getting larger clusters. But for gamma less than 1, you will always get the smaller clusters. In terms of physics, people always do. If you see these curves, they look similar. So you can try to find some kind of scaling relation. That means if you somehow normalize this n value with mu, then all this curve can fall into a master curve. So from that, you can find a relation of average cluster size depending on the mu and gamma. So here we do that. So we divide first the average n value at mu is equal to 50. And try to feed, you will see that for gamma greater than 1, all the curve fall into master curve. So you really need as you see here, the error bar is huge. So you really need a large statistics for that. You have to simulate for say 200 different initial condition. So if you feed that, we can get this n as close to 2.8. So that means this value goes as 50 by mu to the power 2.8. And also now this is a variable n average mu is equal to 50. We can plot this as respect to gamma and try to fit it. We will get the coefficient as 2.0. So if we combine these two, we can get we can get a relation. The average cluster size goes as gamma to the power 2.0 and by mu to the power 2.8. So you can clearly see that generally, if you don't do that, so you can think that the effect from this point, you can clearly see that the effect of gamma and mu is different, their contribution towards the average cluster size. So I promised you, so we will compare the cluster size distribution to the patient data from different, collecting the cluster size, CTC cluster from blood sample of different patient of different cancer type. So here we plot some of that, melanoma, prostate cancer, and breast cancer type, glioblastoma also. So depending on this is the size distributions. So as you can see, and we try to fit, it is not exactly fitting, but we try to compare with different couple parameter values of gamma and mu. So as you see, at gamma is equal to 1 and mu is equal to 40, we'll try closely close resemblance with this kind of data. As you decrease this mu value, keeping the gamma fixed, then you see getting smaller cluster probability will be lower and lower, because as you know, decreasing the mu value will leads to the larger clusters. This kind of trend really change for this glioblastoma cancer type. Here, if you choose gamma 2 mu 30, you will slightly find a peak here around say 3 or 4 cell clusters, but it is drastically changed completely if for this case of breast cancer type. So here there is a high peak in between, say around 5 to 6 cells, and there is a really lower probability of getting smaller clusters of 1 or 2. So we'll manage to it is not fitting, but we managed to compare the data with the cluster size distributions. So there was some chat. So, so I think, Kirin, your question, I think I have answered this thing. Sorry. So initially the cluster, there can be a release of larger clusters, but this cluster can also break in the median because of, say, there are some cell aligned in different directions. That's why initially you can find a larger clusters, but eventually they can break also. So they will, eventually you can expect some kind of saturation after a long time. So I think this is the last topic I should cover today. So as you can see, not only the adhesion and the migration property, the mesenchymal cell has a really elongated cell. So that we can manipulate by the perimeter term here. So we see strangely, so this is the value of target perimeter, and we calculate similarly the average cluster size. You'll see previously we choose 25 if you remember. So you are here. So in this intermediate range, we will get the maximum cluster size. As we increase the P0 or decrease the target parameter, we will always get smaller size clusters. For any, here we choose one particular value of gamma and 2 values of mu, and we see the similar trend. Obviously, the effect is more pronounced for smaller value of 40, because as you know, if we decrease mu, we will get larger clusters. This thing can be explained by the cortical tension kind of scenario. So if we calculate this difference between target parameter and average parameter you are getting, so you will get this kind of curve. So around say 25 or 24, the cell can only attain their shape. That means this difference is 0. For greater than 0 also, for less than 0 also, the cell can't attain their shape. So because here the average P, the average perimeter you are getting, it is less than the target perimeter. So that means the cortical tension is negative. So that's why it will it is easy to break the clusters. That's why you are getting smaller cluster size here. But compared to this other part, for the P0 for P average greater than P0, the cortical tension is positive. That also the cells become more rigid. So that can also lead to the breaking of these clusters. Below this value, you will not see any. The cells are too rigid to release from the force is, this mu is not enough to release the clusters. As you also see for this, say this 25 was our choice of target parameter initially. Here we will see from the initial point, there is not that much change in the, this is the time series of the average cluster size. But for other two cases, initially the cluster was larger, they release as a large clusters, but eventually they break towards a smaller clusters. This is true for two different cases. So as you see, if you want to see the how the shape changes towards as you increase the P0 value, just see the single cell, it become elongated. After a certain time, it is a problem with the this kind of modeling. The cell will break. There is solution to modify that. There are many solutions. So I think in CCTV there is solution is cell connectivity, and people have done other way also, how to incorporate high membrane fluctuation, still getting the intact cell. This thing can be measured by different parameters. One thing is called shape index. That means it is the perimeter divided by square root of area. The shape index, as you see, P0, it is increasing. That means cell become elongated. Or you can calculate the circularity of the cell. Circularity is decreasing. For a perfect circle, it is 1. So I have we have not discussed the heterogeneity here. So I think so. What do you think, Hayden? So should I stop here or going forward for 1 2 slide?
So let's maybe ask the audience, would you rather have a little bit more time for various questions, or should we go ahead and discuss heterogeneity before we move to Q&A?
Till now, if you have any question, you can ask, I think 1 2 questions, or maybe it will take say 2 3 minutes more. Yeah.
Give people a second to type into the chat if they have questions. So you can enter your questions into the chat, or feel free to unmute and ask if that's faster.
Mhm. I think let me go through the because previously we have discussed these clusters. Whenever they release, the cells are heterogeneous. That means all the cells have not similar motility or similar adhesion property. So this how this heterogeneity helps. So for that case, we just test one simple scenario. So just choose 2 different kind of hybrid cell, H1 and H2. Similar setup, 20%, 20%. Just choose the similar adhesion property gamma, but mu of H1 is greater than mu of H2. So we will vary this difference between these two mu. So for this case, we choose say the gap delta mu is very less. One is 35 and one is 40. So here you see, so this green cell has higher motility than the blue cells. Blue and green both are hybrid cells. And here, if you see, the difference is more. Similar scenario. But let's see. So first thing one can see, this blue cell actually carrying the green cells. If you see, always the blue cells are in the front. Here we plot the center of mass of the cells only, not the full cells. So as you see, the green clusters is carrying the blue cells are carrying the green cells. This is a property of these are called leader cells. In general, in tumor invasive front, there are some leader cells. This can be from the tumor cell only, or maybe some non-cancerous cells from the ECM. They can also, just like say the fibroblast, they can also help to release the clusters. So if you see the final condition here, so for when the delta mu was small, you see these clusters of two different kind of cells. But here, most of the cases, you will see homogeneous kind of cluster, either blue cluster or green cluster. Here, these are heterogeneous. Here, these are separated. That purely depending on the delta mu. So how large this is. So that means initially the higher mu cell, that means these blue cells will try to release the other cell, but if the difference is higher, so they will be separated. So to get more heterogeneous clusters, so delta mu should be small. And if we just try to analyze this data, just here each the similar cluster size distribution as we calculated previously, but we only split each cluster in 3 cells. Either these are only H2 cell or only H1 cell or hybrid cell. As you see, as delta mu is smaller, delta mu is 5 or -5 in both direction, because we calculate either 35, 40 or 40, 45, something like that. So you will see many green lines, right? That represent there are possibility of getting hybrid clusters. But as you increase this delta mu, if you see only the red and blue cells, that means homogeneous kind of cluster. So from this, we can conclude that the CTC, the clusters which released as a, say, the heterogeneous clusters. So the smaller clusters, and another interesting thing also, if you see this for delta, just see this case, delta mu is equal to 10. So here, just compare the first set of lines. Say cluster size n is equal to 1. So there you can get only H2 cells more. In this case, the red cell more, and in this case, the blue cells more. That means the cells with a lower motility. So generally expect, if you increase the mu, the cell will become more motile and you will get smaller and smaller clusters. But here, the combination, you see the smaller clusters with less motile cells. So this is happening because initially the high motile cells form a large group of clusters, and they will keep some small low motile cell in their tail. But if the delta mu is becoming larger, these two clusters break apart. So that's why we get some CTC. So that means if we get some smaller clusters, they are more epithelial-like. That means going with less motility. And if we get larger clusters, they are more mesenchymal-like. That means with high motility. This thing can explain in some, it is found in some breast cancer data. The CTCs are more mesenchymal compared to the primary tumor. I think I should end here. If you have, so I want to thank Professor Herbert Levin, my supervisor in Northeastern. And for this project, we also discussed Max B with and Mohit from IISc India. And we also thank the CompuCell3D community to do the simulation very easily. And yeah, these are the supporting funding agencies. So if you have any question, you can put in the chat. I think we don't have time also. You can contact me later.
Yeah,
if you have any questions. I am putting the mail ID in the chat.
Yeah, that'd be great. So again, the code that we went through today is in the Google Drive, as well as the slides for today. We do have about 2 minutes if anybody has a quick question about anything we've seen. Again, feel free to unmute and ask if you'd like. Okay, last chance for questions. Okay, great. Well, like Mrinmoy said, he put his email in the chat here if you have any questions or would like to follow up with him about anything.
Or you can see the paper, maybe. Yeah, so we have discussed all these things, all the possibilities there.
Yeah, so there is a lot of information in the paper as well. And that link was also, I linked that at the start of the meeting. So
Yeah, we
So
just
great.
so the one quick thing I should mention maybe.
Mhm.
Sorry. Yeah, so in this case we take a very simple scenario. So there is nothing in the medium, right? So but we know there are main component of extracellular matrix is the collagen. So people have seen depending on the density of collagen or orientation of collagen. So it is very the inversion of the cluster reach towards the circulatory system is important, because we imagine here when they release, they will eventually go to the circulatory system, so that we compare the distribution to the CTC data. But in reality, we have to consider the ECM in different way, how much we can do in the computation system. And another thing also, we do not consider the EMT process. Here we see the static number of cells of hybrid and epithelial cells. The rate of EMT, so either you can incorporate it by some, initially I have shown some gene regulatory network, or simply in mathematical way, some rate you can associate when the cells converting to epithelial to hybrid cell or the mesenchymal cells. So depending on this time scale, because you know this time scale is important because there is certain time scale to release from the cluster. So the cluster will form with the availability of the cell nearby. Thank you.
Gotcha. Okay, so thank you, Dr. Mukherjee. We appreciate you coming to give the talk today. For those returning to the main session, we'll have our 15-minute break until 4:30, and then we'll see you back in the main room for our final session with Julio Bamonte. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And you can all head back to the main room now.